In today's video, I'm going to tell you about one of the most intense operations I ever lived through. A routine patrol in the Iraqi desert that turned into 6 hours of pure hell when our convoy got hit by an IED and we found ourselves trapped in the middle of a coordinated ambush. Don't leave this video because I'm going to walk you through every single detail of how we fought our way out of what seemed like certain death. My name is Steve Harris, former Sergeant Major with 25 years of service in the United States Army. Every day on this channel, I bring you real military operation stories that I lived through during my time in service. These aren't Hollywood movies, folks. This is the real deal. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you get notified when I drop new military stories, and drop a comment below. All the gear and products I use and recommend are in the description or pinned in the first comment. It was March 2006, and I was stationed at Fob Liberty, about 40 miles southwest of Baghdad. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, nothing but sand, rocks, and the occasional cluster of mud brick buildings that passed for villages out there. The temperature during the day could hit 120 Fahrenheit, and at night it dropped to near freezing. It was a harsh, unforgiving landscape that didn't care whether you were American or Iraqi. It would kill you just the same if you weren't careful. Our mission that day seemed straightforward enough. Intelligence had reported unusual movement patterns in a sector about 15 clicks north of our base. Command wanted us to conduct a patrol sweep, check out some suspected weapons caches, and show presence in an area that had been quiet for too long. In Iraq, quiet usually meant trouble was brewing. I was leading a 4-vehicle convoy that morning, 2 up-armored Humvees, 1 MRAP, and a gun truck with a 50 cal mounted on top. 14 soldiers total, including myself. My driver was Corporal Martinez, a kid from Texas who'd been with my unit for 8 months. Solid soldier, never complained, always had my 6. In the back seat was Specialist Johnson, our medic, and Private Thompson, barely 19 years old on his first deployment. The other vehicles carried the rest of my squad: Staff Sergeant Williams leading Vehicle 2 with his team, Sergeant Rodriguez in the MRAP with the heavy equipment, and Corporal Davis manning the gun truck. These weren't just soldiers to me. After months in that desert, they were family. We'd shared foxholes, bad MREs, and stories from home. We'd watched each other's backs through countless patrols, and I trusted every single one of them with my life. Pre-mission briefing was at 0500 hours. The intel officer, Lieutenant Casey, spread out the maps on the table in our operations tent. The route was a standard patrol path we'd run dozens of times. Highway 8 north for about 10 miles, then east on a dirt road toward the village of Al-Rashid. The suspected cache sites were in 3 buildings on the outskirts of the village. Weather forecast shows clear skies, visibility unlimited, Casey reported. No significant weather patterns expected. Intel suggests light enemy presence in the area, but you know how that goes. I did know how that goes. Light enemy presence could turn into a company of insurgents real quick if you weren't ready for it. What's our backup plan if things go sideways? I asked. QRF is on 15-minute standby. Close air support available if needed. Apache Flight is running training missions about 20 miles south. They can be redirected to your location within 10 minutes of your call. That was reassuring, but in combat, 10 minutes might as well be 10 hours when bullets are flying. We finished our equipment checks by 0630. Body armor, helmets, communications gear, weapons, ammunition, water, medical supplies. In the desert, you carried everything you might need because there wasn't any corner store to run to if you forgot something. Each Humvee carried extra water, MREs, ammunition, and a basic medical kit. I walked the line, checking each vehicle and soldier. Martinez was running through his pre-combat checks on our Humvee: tire pressure, fluid levels, communication systems, weapons mounts. Everything had to be perfect because mechanical failure in hostile territory could be a death sentence. "How's she looking, Martinez?" I called out. "Running like a Swiss watch, Sergeant Major. She's ready to roll." Thompson was nervous. I could see it in the way he kept checking and rechecking his rifle. First combat patrol jitters. I'd seen it 1,000 times. "Hey, Thompson," I said, walking over. "You good to go?" "Yes, Sergeant Major, just first time outside the wire on patrol." "Listen to me, kid. Stay alert, follow orders, and trust your training. Johnson here is the best medic in the battalion, and Martinez could drive through hell blindfolded. You're in good hands." The kid nodded, looking a little more confident. But you never really know how someone's gonna react until the lead starts flying. At 0700 hours, we rolled out through the main gate of Phobby Liberty. The desert morning was already heating up, and I could feel the familiar weight of full combat gear. The convoy moved in standard formation, lead vehicle, main body, trail vehicle, with proper spacing to minimize casualties if we hit an IED. The first part of the patrol was routine. Highway 8 was a decent road, paved most of the way, with good visibility in all directions. We maintained radio contact with base and between vehicles. Every few miles, I'd check in with the other vehicle commanders. "Bravo 2, how's your sector looking?" "All clear, Sergeant Major. No unusual activity." "Bravo 3, status?" "Good to go. Roads clear ahead." About 40 minutes into the patrol, we turned east onto the dirt road toward Al-Rashid. This was where things always got more interesting. The dirt road was rougher, with deeper ruts and more places for insurgents to hide IEDs. The terrain became more varied. Small hills, scattered rocks, and the occasional cluster of palm trees around a water source. Martinez was doing a good job reading the road, watching for anything that looked out of place. In Iraq, you learned to spot the signs: disturbed earth, unusual objects, wires, anything that didn't belong. An IED could be hidden in a dead animal, a pile of trash, or even buried in the roadway itself. "Keep your eyes open, everybody," I called over the radio. "We're entering the danger zone." The village of Al-Rashid was still about 5 miles ahead when Martinez suddenly hit the brakes. "Sergeant Major, check out that road ahead. Something doesn't look right." I grabbed my binoculars and scanned the area. About 200 meters ahead, the road curved slightly to the left, around a small hill. On the right side of the road was a large pothole that had been there for months, but today there was something different about it. "What do you see, Martinez?" "That pothole, Sergeant Major. Last time we came through here, it was just a hole. Now it looks like somebody filled it in with fresh dirt." He was right. The earth around the pothole was a different color than the surrounding area. Darker, more recently disturbed. Classic IED placement. I got on the radio to the rest of the convoy. "All stations, this is Bravo 1. We've got a possible IED at grid reference." I read off the coordinates. "All vehicles halt and maintain position." We stopped the convoy about 50 meters back from the suspected device. This was the moment when training and experience had to take over. Every soldier in that convoy knew that making the wrong decision here could get us all killed. I studied the terrain through my binoculars. The road curved to the left, with a small hill on the right side, rising about 30 feet above the roadway. On the left side was more open ground, scattered with rocks and a few scraggly bushes. If insurgents were planning an ambush, they'd want high ground for observation and fields of fire, but something felt wrong about the whole setup. In my experience, insurgents didn't usually leave IEDs sitting out in the open where they could be easily spotted. They were usually better concealed than this, unless... "Johnson, what's your read on this situation?" I asked my medic, who'd been in country almost as long as I had. "Could be a decoy, Sergeant Major. Make us stop and look at the obvious threat while the real danger comes from somewhere else." That's exactly what I was thinking. I scanned the hills and terrain around us more carefully. The road we were on ran through a natural choke point. Hills on both sides, limited maneuver room, only one way forward and one way back. If I was planning an ambush, this is exactly where I'd do it. "All stations, maintain security. I want 360-degree observation. Something doesn't feel right about this. I was reaching for my radio to call for an EOD team to check out the suspected IED when the world exploded. The blast came from directly under our lead vehicle, not from the obvious decoy ahead of us, but from a pressure plate IED buried right in the roadway where we'd stopped. The explosion lifted the front end of our Humvee 3 feet off the ground and slammed it back down. The windshield shattered, the doors buckled, and smoke filled the passenger compartment. But that was just the beginning. Even before the debris from the first explosion hit the ground, automatic weapons fire erupted from the hills on both sides of the road. Muzzle flashes sparkled from concealed positions, and the distinctive crack of AK-47s filled the air. We'd driven straight into a kill zone. The insurgents had planned this perfectly. The decoy IED ahead made us stop exactly where they wanted us, right on top of the real device. Now we were trapped in a natural choke point with wounded soldiers, damaged vehicles, and enemies shooting at us from elevated positions with clear fields of fire. Martinez was slumped over the wheel, blood running down his face from where flying glass had cut him. Thompson was screaming, but I couldn't tell if he was hit or just scared. Johnson was already reaching for his medical kit. "Contact! Contact! IED strike and small arms fire!" I yelled into the radio. "Bravo 1 is immobilized. We're taking effective fire from multiple positions." Through the smoke and confusion, I could see muzzle flashes from at least 6 different locations. The insurgents had us in a classic L-shaped ambush, some firing from the high ground to our right, others positioned ahead of us and to our left. They'd obviously been watching our patrol patterns and had chosen their positions carefully. RPG rounds started impacting around our vehicles, sending up geysers of sand and rock. One round hit the hill behind us, showering our convoy with debris. Another screamed over our heads and exploded in the distance. This wasn't just a harassing attack or a hit and run. This was a coordinated assault designed to destroy our entire convoy. I grabbed my rifle and kicked open the damaged door of the Humvee. "Johnson, get Martinez stabilized. Thompson, return fire on those muzzle flashes to the right." The next 6 hours would test everything I'd learned about combat leadership in 25 years of military service. We were outnumbered, outgunned, trapped in terrible terrain, with wounded soldiers and limited ammunition. But we were United States soldiers, and we weren't going down without a fight. The first few minutes after that IED blast were pure chaos. Your training kicks in, but everything happens so fast that your brain struggles to process it all. Martinez was conscious but bleeding from multiple cuts on his face and arms. Thompson had stopped screaming and was returning fire, which was good. Meant he wasn't frozen up. "Johnson, how bad is Martinez?" I shouted over the gunfire. "Cuts and probable concussion, but he's mobile," Johnson yelled back while bandaging Martinez's head. "No major trauma." That was the best news I could hope for right then. In combat, you learn to triage everything. Casualties, threats, resources. Martinez being mobile meant one less soldier I had to carry out of there. I got on the radio to check the status of the other vehicles. "Bravo 2, Bravo 3, Bravo 4, give me a sit rep." "Bravo 2 here," came Williams' voice over the static. "We're operational but taking heavy fire from the ridgeline. I count at least 8 muzzle flashes." "Bravo 3 operational," Rodriguez reported from the MRAP. "Vehicles intact but we're pinned down." "Bravo 4 gun truck is operational," Davis called out, engaging targets on the high ground with the 50 cal. The rhythmic hammering of Davis's 50 caliber machine gun was music to my ears. That weapon could reach out and touch someone at 1,500 meters, and its psychological effect on enemy fighters was significant. But I could already hear the insurgents adjusting their fire, trying to target our gun truck. I needed to assess our tactical situation quickly. We were in a classic kill zone, a stretch of road where the enemy had overlapping fields of fire and limited escape routes for us. The initial IED had disabled our lead vehicle's mobility, but the armor had protected us from the worst of the blast. Now we were facing small arms fire from elevated positions on 3 sides. Through the smoke and dust, I could see the insurgent positions more clearly. They'd chosen their spots well, rocky outcroppings and small caves in the hillsides that provided natural cover and concealment. These weren't amateur fighters. This was a well-planned ambush by people who understood military tactics. "All stations, this is Bravo 1, I called over the radio. "We need to establish a defensive perimeter immediately. Use the vehicles for cover and establish overlapping fields of fire." The convoy quickly moved into a defensive formation. Williams positioned his Humvee to cover our left flank. Rodriguez moved the MRAP to provide heavy protection for our rear, and Davis's gun truck took up an overwatch position where the 50 cal could engage targets on the high ground. But we had a problem. The disabled lead vehicle was sitting right in the middle of the kill zone, and we had wounded soldiers inside. We couldn't abandon it, but staying put meant remaining in the enemy's primary target area. An RPG round screamed past my head and exploded against the hillside behind us. The insurgents were getting more aggressive, probably thinking they had us trapped and helpless. They were about to learn different. "Martinez, can you move?" I shouted. "Roger, Sergeant Major, I'm good to go." "Then grab your rifle and get to that rock formation on our right. Johnson, you're with him. Thompson, you're with me." We needed to break out of the kill zone, but we couldn't do it by running. The only way out was through. I'd learned in 25 years of combat that when you're ambushed, you have two choices: die in place or attack through the ambush. There's no middle ground. I got back on the radio to coordinate with the other vehicles. "All stations, we're gonna assault through this ambush. Bravo 4, I need you to lay down suppressive fire on the ridgeline. Bravo 2 and 3, prepare to bound forward on my signal." "Roger, Sergeant Major," came the replies. The 50 cal opened up with a sustained burst, sending heavy rounds into the suspected enemy positions. I could see chunks of rock flying from the impacts, and at least 2 of the enemy firing positions went quiet immediately. "Now, move, move, move!" Williams's Humvee surged forward, his gunner laying down covering fire while they moved to a new position with better cover. Rodriguez followed with the MRAP, its heavy armor providing mobile protection for the squad. But the insurgents weren't giving up. As soon as our vehicles started moving, they shifted their fire and increased their rate of engagement. AK-47 rounds were cracking over our heads, and I could hear the distinctive whistle of incoming mortar rounds. The first mortar round hit about 50 meters to our left, sending up a column of sand and debris. The second one was closer, maybe 30 meters. They were walking their fire toward our position, adjusting based on the previous impacts. "Incoming mortars!" I shouted. "Take cover!" The third round hit close enough that I felt the concussion wave. Shrapnel whined overhead, and I could taste dust and cordite in the air. These guys had indirect fire support, which meant this was a bigger operation than just a few insurgents with rifles. I needed to call for backup, but first I had to get my immediate situation under control. You can't wait for cavalry when you're fighting for your life right now. "Johnson, Martinez, lay down suppressive fire on that ridgeline. Thompson, you're with me. We're gonna flank left and take out those mortar positions." Combat movement under fire is something you train for, but it's different when people are actually trying to kill you. You move in short bounds, sprint, dive, assess, repeat. Every second you're exposed, enemy soldiers are trying to put bullets in you. Thompson stayed right behind me as we bounded from cover to cover, working our way around the left side of the ambush zone. The kid was doing good, following orders, keeping his head down, returning fire when he had targets. We reached a position where I could see the mortar team. 3 insurgents about 400 meters away, working a 60mm mortar from behind a rock wall. They were good, disciplined, organized, adjusting their fire professionally. "Thompson, you see those guys with the mortar?" "Roger, Sergeant Major!" "On my count, we're both gonna engage. Aim center mass, controlled pairs, 3, 2, 1, fire!" We opened up simultaneously. At 400 meters with M4 carbines. It's not easy shooting, but both Thompson and I were expert marksmen. I saw at least one of the insurgents go down immediately. The other 2 scrambled for better cover, but their mortar fire stopped. That gave our convoy some breathing room. but we were still taking heavy, small arms fire from multiple positions. I could hear Davis's 50 cal hammering away, and Williams's squad was engaging targets from their new position, but this was turning into a sustained firefight. I got on the radio to call for reinforcements. Base, this is Bravo 1. We are in heavy contact at grid reference. I read off our coordinates. Request immediate QRF and close air support. Multiple casualties, one vehicle immobilized. Bravo 1, this is base. Copy your request. QRF is rolling now, ETA 20 minutes. Apache flight is being redirected to your position, ETA 12 minutes. 20 minutes. In combat, that's an eternity. A lot can happen in 20 minutes when people are shooting at you with automatic weapons and RPGs. Another RPG round impacted near Rodriguez's MRAP, but the heavy armor absorbed the blast. That vehicle was a lifesaver, designed specifically to withstand IED attacks and small arms fire. But even the MRAP had limits. I could see that we were slowly gaining fire superiority. Davis's 50 cal was methodically working over the enemy positions, and Williams had his squad in good firing positions where they could engage multiple targets. But the insurgents were dug in good, and they weren't giving up. "Sergeant Major," Thompson called out. "I see movement in that wadi to our front. Looks like they're trying to flank us." A wadi is a dry riverbed, common in desert terrain. They provide natural cover and concealment for troop movement. If insurgents were using the wadi to get around behind us, we could be in serious trouble. I grabbed my binoculars and scanned the area Thompson was pointing to. He was right. I could see at least 6 fighters moving through the wadi, carrying AK-47s and what looked like more RPGs. They were trying to get into position to hit us from our vulnerable rear area. "All stations, this is Bravo 1. We've got enemy movement in the wadi to our southeast. Bravo 3, can you engage those targets?" "Negative, Sergeant Major. We don't have line of sight from our position." This was getting complicated. We were fighting enemies to our front and flanks. We had wounded soldiers, 1 disabled vehicle, and now more insurgents trying to get behind us. In a few minutes, we could be surrounded. But before I continue with how we turn this situation around, I've got to tell you about something that's been making a real difference in my life lately. Look, as you get older, you start noticing things. Maybe you're not as energetic as you used to be. Maybe you're not performing the way you want to in certain areas of your life. I started using a product that's completely changed my confidence and performance, giving me back that edge I thought I'd lost. If you're dealing with similar issues, check the link in the description or the first pinned comment. Trust me, it works. Now, back to our fight in the desert. We had insurgents trying to flank us through that wadi, and if they succeeded, we'd be fighting a 360-degree battle with limited ammunition and nowhere to run. I made a decision that went against conventional tactics, but felt right in the moment. Instead of waiting for them to get into position behind us, I decided we needed to attack them while they were still moving through the wadi. "Johnson, Martinez, you two hold this position and keep pressure on the ridgeline. Thompson, you're with me. We're going hunting." We low-crawled about 200 meters to get a better angle on the wadi. The insurgents were moving in single file through the depression. Thinking they were concealed from our view, they were about to find out different. Thompson and I got into good firing positions where we could engage the entire column as they moved through a narrow section of the wadi. This was going to be like shooting fish in a barrel, but in combat, you take every advantage you can get. "Wait until they're all in the kill zone," I whispered to Thompson. "We'll take the lead and trail first, then work toward the middle." The insurgents moved right into our trap. When the last fighter entered the narrow section, I gave Thompson the signal. We opened up with rapid, accurate fire. The insurgents were caught completely by surprise. They'd been focused on getting into position to attack our main convoy and hadn't expected to be engaged from this direction. The lead fighter went down immediately. The trail fighter spun around and collapsed. The others in the middle of the column tried to find cover, but a wadi doesn't offer much protection when someone's shooting down at you from the rim. In less than 30 seconds, we'd eliminated the entire flanking force. 6 enemy fighters who would never threaten American soldiers again. "Good shooting, Thompson," I told the kid. "You just saved our whole convoy." But our celebration was short-lived. The insurgents on the ridgeline had figured out where we were and were now concentrating their fire on our position. Bullets were snapping past our heads, and I could see muzzle flashes from at least 4 different weapons. We needed to get back to the main defensive position, but we were now pinned down ourselves. The insurgents were keeping us in place with accurate rifle fire while probably planning their next move. That's when I heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the distinctive whop-whop-whop of Apache helicopter rotors. The Apache helicopters appeared like angels of death rising over the eastern ridgeline. 2 AH-64s in attack formation, their 30mm chain guns already rotating toward target areas. In 25 years of military service, I'd never been happier to see American air power. "Bravo 1, this is Reaper 27, came the voice over my radio. "We have you visual and are tracking multiple enemy positions. Can you mark friendlies?" I grabbed my signal mirror and flashed our position toward the lead Apache. "Reaper 27, friendlies marked with mirror flash from the Wadi Rim. Enemy positions are on the ridgeline to our north and northeast, approximately 6 to 8 fighting positions." "Copy that, Bravo 1. We're gonna light them up. Keep your heads down." What happened next was a masterclass in close air support. The lead Apache rolled in on the ridgeline, its 30mm chain gun spitting fire at 3,000 rounds per minute. I could see chunks of rock and debris flying from the enemy positions as the depleted uranium rounds tore into their concealment. The insurgents tried to return fire, but shooting at an Apache helicopter with small arms is like trying to stop a freight train with a BB gun. The second Apache came in from a different angle, launching Hydra rockets into suspected enemy positions. The explosions echoed across the desert like thunder. "Thompson, now's our chance!" I shouted. "Back to the convoy!" We bounded back toward our main defensive position, while the Apaches continued their attack runs. The enemy fire had dropped off significantly. Most of the insurgents were either dead, wounded, or keeping their heads down to avoid the helicopter gunships. When I got back to our perimeter, I found my soldiers in good spirits. Nothing boosts morale like watching your enemy get hammered by attack helicopters. Martinez had recovered enough to be back on his rifle, and Johnson was treating minor wounds on 2 other soldiers who'd been hit by shrapnel. "Casualties report," I called out. 3 walking wounded, no KIA, Williams reported. "Martinez, Thompson from Bravo 4, and Rodriguez have minor shrapnel wounds, but everybody's still in the fight." That was better than I'd hoped. In an ambush like this, casualties are usually much heavier. Good training, good equipment, and good luck had kept us alive. But the fight wasn't over yet. Through my binoculars, I could see movement in buildings near the village of Al-Rashid. The insurgents were repositioning, probably calling for reinforcements of their own. This had been a coordinated attack, which meant there were more enemy fighters in the area. "Reaper 27, this is Bravo 1. I've got movement in the village to our northeast. Looks like they're repositioning for another attack." "Copy, Bravo 1. We're running low on ammunition, but we can make another gun run before we have to RTB for rearm." RTB, return to base. Once those Apaches left to rearm and refuel, we'd be on our own again until the quick reaction force arrived. And in Iraq, enemy fighters had a habit of disappearing into the civilian population and then reappearing when you least expected them. I needed to make a tactical decision. We could stay in our defensive position and wait for the QRF, but that would give the insurgents time to bring up more fighters and weapons. Or we could take the initiative and assault the village while we still had air support. In combat, the side that dictates the tempo usually wins. I decided we were going on the offensive. "All stations, this is Bravo 1. We're gonna assault through to the village while we've got air cover. Bravo 2 and 3, you'll provide base of fire. Bravo 4, your gun truck will support the assault. My team will lead the advance." "Roger, Sergeant Major," came the replies. I looked at my immediate team. Martinez, Johnson and Thompson. Martinez still had bandages on his head from the IED blast, but he was ready to go. Johnson had his medical kit and rifle. Thompson looked nervous, but determined. "You guys ready for this?" I asked. "Hurrah, Sergeant Major," they replied. The assault began with the Apaches making one final gun run on the village outskirts. Their 30mm rounds chewed up the buildings where we'd seen enemy movement, and Hydra rockets destroyed what looked like a weapons cache in one of the compounds. While the helicopters were engaging, Williams and Rodriguez laid down suppressive fire from our main position. Davis's 50 cal hammered any building that showed signs of enemy activity. The combined firepower was devastating. "Move out," I commanded. My team bounded forward in tactical formation, using fire and movement techniques we'd practiced hundreds of times. Sprint to cover, assess threats, engage targets, move again. The village was about 400 meters away across open ground, but we had good fire support covering our advance. Halfway to the village, enemy fire erupted from several buildings. AK-47 rounds cracked overhead, and I could see muzzle flashes from windows and rooftops. These insurgents were disciplined. They'd held their fire until we were committed to the assault and couldn't easily withdraw. "Contact front," I called over the radio. "Multiple enemy positions in the village." We dove for what cover we could find. A low stone wall that ran along an irrigation ditch. It wasn't much, but it was better than being caught in the open. "Johnson, Martinez, engage that building on the left. Thompson, you're with me on the right side." The firefight intensified. Enemy rounds were impacting all around our position, chipping pieces off the stone wall and kicking up sand. I could hear the distinctive crack of bullets passing close overhead, but our supporting fire was having an effect. Williams' squad was engaging targets in the village with accurate rifle fire, and Davis's 50 cal was systematically destroying enemy fighting positions. Every time an insurgent exposed himself to shoot at us, he got hammered by supporting fire from our main position. "Reaper 2-7, this is Bravo 1. We're taking effective fire from multiple buildings in the village. Can you identify and engage?" "Negative, Bravo 1. Too close to your position for gun runs. We're Winchester on rockets and low on 30mm. We need to RTB now." Winchester meant out of ammunition. The Apaches had to leave to rearm, which meant we were about to lose our air support right in the middle of the assault. "Copy, Reaper. Thanks for the assist. Good hunting, Bravo 1. Stay safe down there." The sound of the Apache rotors fading into the distance was sobering. Now it was just us, against however many insurgents were holed up in that village. But we'd come too far to turn back now. I studied the village layout through my rifle scope. Most of the enemy fire was coming from 3 buildings, a 2-story house on the left, a single-story compound in the center, and what looked like a small mosque on the right. Classic defensive positions with overlapping fields of fire. The insurgents had made one mistake, though. They were so focused on our assault team that they weren't paying enough attention to our supporting fire positions. Williams and Rodriguez had moved to better positions and were now engaging the village from a different angle. "All stations, this is Bravo 1. I need concentrated fire on that 2-story building on the left. Pour everything you've got into it for 30 seconds, then shift to the center compound." The response was immediate and devastating. M4 carbines, M249 saws, and the 50 cal machine gun all opened up on the target building simultaneously. I could see chunks of concrete and wood flying from the impacts, windows shattered, and part of the roof collapsed. When the fire shifted to the center compound, the insurgents there tried to relocate to better positions. That's when Thompson proved he was becoming a real soldier. "Sergeant Major, 2 fighters moving between buildings." I looked where he was pointing and saw 2 insurgents running from the center compound toward the mosque. They were carrying what looked like an RPG and ammunition. "Take them," I ordered. Thompson and I engaged simultaneously. Both insurgents went down before they reached cover. The RPG skittered across the ground and exploded when it hit a wall, probably set off by our rifle fire. That seemed to break the insurgents' will to fight. The return fire from the village dropped off significantly, and I could see figures running away from the buildings toward the desert on the far side. They were withdrawing, probably falling back to regroup somewhere else. "Cease fire! Cease fire!" I called over the radio. "Looks like they're withdrawing." We maintained our positions and watched the village for several minutes, but the enemy fire had stopped completely. Through my binoculars, I could see bodies in the streets and damaged buildings, but no signs of organized resistance. That's when I heard the rumble of diesel engines approaching from the south. The quick reaction force was finally arriving, 2 more Humvees and an MRAP carrying a squad of infantry and a medic. "Bravo 1, this is Rattlesnake 6, came the voice of the QRF commander, Captain Morrison. "We're approaching your position from the south. What's your status?" "Rattlesnake 6, this is Bravo 1. We've broken contact with the enemy. Village appears secure, but we haven't cleared it yet. We have 3 walking wounded and 1 immobilized vehicle." "Copy that. We'll take over security while you consolidate and prepare for movement." As the QRF vehicles pulled into our position, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. We'd been in continuous combat for almost 4 hours, and the adrenaline was starting to wear off. But we'd accomplished something significant. We'd turned a well-planned enemy ambush into a tactical victory. Captain Morrison walked up to my position, ducking slightly as he moved. Even though the firing had stopped, you never knew when a sniper might take a shot. "Hell of a fight, Sergeant Major," he said, shaking my hand. "From what I could see on the radio traffic, you handled this perfectly." "Just good soldiers doing their job, sir," I replied. "But I think there's more to this than just a random ambush." I was right about that. But what we discovered when we finally cleared that village would change everything I thought I knew about the enemy we were fighting. What do you think we found in that village that made this operation so significant? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm curious to see if anyone can guess what we uncovered. The village clearing operation revealed something that completely changed our understanding of what we'd just fought through. This wasn't just a random ambush by local insurgents. This was a sophisticated operation planned and executed by foreign fighters with serious military training. Captain Morrison and I led the clearing team through Al-Rashid systematically, building by building, standard urban combat procedures, check corners, watch for booby traps, assume every doorway could hide an enemy. The village was eerily quiet after the intensity of the firefight. In the first building we cleared, we found something that made my blood run cold. Maps of our patrol routes going back 3 months, detailed sketches of FOB Liberty's perimeter defenses, and photographs of American soldiers, including some of my own men. These insurgents had been planning this ambush for a long time, and they knew exactly who they were targeting. "Jesus Christ," muttered Corporal Davis as he looked over the intelligence materials. "They've been watching us for months." But that was just the beginning. In the 2-story house that had been the main enemy strongpoint, we found a sophisticated communication setup, satellite radios, encryption equipment, and detailed tactical manuals written in Arabic with notes in what looked like Farsi. This was Iranian-backed operation, not just local fighters. The weapons cache was equally revealing. Instead of the usual collection of beat-up AK-47s and homemade explosives, we found brand new rifles, advanced IED components, and military-grade equipment that could only have come through organized supply channels. Someone with serious resources had equipped these fighters. "Sergeant Major, you need to see this," called out Specialist Johnson from the compound's back room. I walked over to find Johnson standing over the bodies of 3 insurgents. But these weren't local Iraqi fighters. 2 were clearly foreign, possibly Chechen or Afghan based on their features and equipment. The 3rd was wearing a uniform I recognized from intelligence briefings, Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. "We just killed an IRGC advisor," I told Captain Morrison quietly. "This is bigger than we thought." The implications were staggering. If Iranian advisors were operating in our sector, it meant the insurgency was getting direct support from a hostile foreign government. The sophisticated planning, the advanced equipment, the detailed intelligence on our operations, it all made sense now. But we weren't done with our discoveries. In the mosque, which had been used as a weapons storage facility, we found something even more disturbing. Plans for attacks on other American units, including a detailed scheme to assault FOB Liberty itself, using the intelligence they'd gathered about our defenses. "Sir," I said to Captain Morrison, "we need to get this intelligence back to headquarters immediately. If these plans are accurate, every American unit in this sector is at risk." As we finished clearing the village, I reflected on how close we'd come to disaster. If we hadn't spotted that decoy IED, if we hadn't maintained proper tactical discipline under fire, if the Apache helicopters had been delayed, this story could have ended very differently. The evacuation of our wounded and damaged equipment took another 2 hours. Martinez, despite his head injuries from the IED blast, insisted on driving our partially damaged Humvee back to base. Thompson, who'd started the day as a nervous kid on his first combat patrol, had proven himself under fire and earned the respect of every soldier in the convoy. "How you feeling, Thompson?" I asked as we prepared to move out. "Different, Sergeant Major," he replied. "I mean, I know I can do this now. I know I won't let my team down. That's what combat does to soldiers. It either breaks them or forges them into something stronger." Thompson had been forged. The convoy back to FOB Liberty was tense but uneventful. We maintained strict tactical discipline, watched for secondary ambushes, and kept our weapons ready. In Iraq, you never knew when the next attack might come. But as we rolled through the gates of our base, I felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond just surviving a firefight. We'd turned a well-planned enemy ambush into an intelligence windfall that would help protect other American soldiers. The maps, communications equipment, and tactical plans we'd captured would give our intelligence officers valuable insights into enemy operations throughout the region. At the debrief that evening, every soldier in the convoy shared their perspective on what had happened. Williams talked about the importance of maintaining communication under fire. Rodriguez emphasized how critical the MRAP's armor had been in protecting his team. Davis described the psychological effect of sustained heavy weapons fire on enemy morale. But it was Thompson who said something that stuck with me. "Sergeant Major, I was scared as hell, but I knew you weren't going to let anything happen to us, and I knew I couldn't let anything happen to you guys either." That's the essence of military leadership, creating an environment where soldiers trust each other completely, even when everything is falling apart around them. In that desert ambush, 14 American soldiers had fought as one unit, and that unity had saved all our lives. The intelligence we captured led to a series of successful operations against Iranian-backed insurgent cells throughout our sector. 3 more weapons caches were discovered and destroyed, and a network of foreign advisors was disrupted. The detailed patrol route information forced us to change our operational patterns, probably preventing several other ambushes. But the most important outcome was that every soldier in that convoy went home. Martinez recovered fully from his injuries and completed his deployment. Thompson went on to become one of the best soldiers in the battalion. Williams, Rodriguez, Davis, and Johnson all continued to serve with distinction. Years later, when I think back on that day in the Iraqi desert, I'm struck by how quickly things can change in combat. One minute you're on a routine patrol, thinking about what you'll have for dinner. The next minute you're fighting for your life against a sophisticated enemy who's been planning to kill you for months. But I'm also struck by the professionalism and courage of American soldiers under extreme pressure. When that IED exploded and the bullets started flying, nobody panicked, nobody ran. Everyone did their job, followed their training, and looked out for their teammates. That's what makes the United States military the most effective fighting force in the world. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you get notified when I post new military operation stories. Hit that like button and drop a comment below telling me what you thought about this operation. And remember, all the gear and products I recommend are in the description or pinned in the first comment. These are things I actually use and trust. The desert teaches you a lot about yourself and about the people you serve with. In that vast, unforgiving landscape where the temperature swings from scorching heat to near-freezing cold, where every shadow might hide an enemy and every pile of rocks might conceal an IED, you learn what really matters. What matters is the soldier next to you. What matters is completing the mission. What matters is making sure everyone comes home alive. Everything else, the politics, the media coverage, the debates back home about whether we should be there, all of that fades away when bullets are flying and your brothers are counting on you. That day in Al-Rashid, we faced a well-equipped, well-trained enemy who had every advantage. They chose the time and place of the battle, they had prepared positions, they had detailed intelligence about our capabilities and movements. By every measure, they should have won that fight. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated the determination, training, and teamwork of American soldiers. They thought that one IED blast and some rifle fire would break our will to fight. Instead, it just made us angry. 6 hours of combat in the Iraqi desert taught me more about leadership than 6 months of peacetime training ever could. When everything is chaos, when people are shooting at you from multiple directions, when you have wounded soldiers and damaged equipment, that's when leadership really matters. That's when the decisions you make determine whether your soldiers live or die. I made a lot of decisions that day, and I'm proud to say that every one of my soldiers made it home. We turned a potential disaster into a tactical victory and captured intelligence that saved other American lives. Most importantly, we proved that no matter how well the enemy plans, no matter what advantages they think they have, American soldiers will find a way to win. That's the story of Sandstorm Ambush. 6 hours of hell in the Iraqi desert that ended with 14 American soldiers standing victorious over an enemy who thought they had us trapped and helpless. It's a story about training, teamwork, courage under fire, and the unbreakable bonds between soldiers who've shared combat together. And it's a reminder that freedom isn't free. Somewhere tonight, American soldiers are standing watch in dangerous places, ready to face whatever threats emerge from the darkness. They're carrying on a tradition of service and sacrifice that goes back to the founding of our nation. And they're doing it with the same professionalism and courage that my soldiers showed in that Iraqi desert. Remember their sacrifice, honor their service, and never forget that the freedoms you enjoy were paid for with the blood and courage of American soldiers who answered the call when their country needed them. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and God bless the United States of America.